Hey, we got a fight preview. You know the deal. I come in very excited, and I'm sure you're excited because this is a big fight week. Once again, we brought on the heavy hitter. We brought Gayle. Gayle, introduce yourself because I am known for just saying things wrong. So we will just let you introduce yourself. It's a little tacky, but it saves me from just kind of an embarrassing segment start.
Oh, well, it saves me from the embarrassment too. I am Gayle Falkenthal. I am the managing editor of NY Fights, longtime boxing devoted online news organization. However, I am not in New York. I never have been. I'm in sunny San Diego, California.
Wonderful location. I believe that's also where Ryan Garcia held his media workout. Now, this fight, I will just play a little segue and paint a picture. Oddly, probably more an abstract painting than a great fine painting, but the interest in this fight is based on a sparring session roughly around 2017, 2018 between Rolando Romero and Ryan Garcia. Rolly got the better of Ryan Garcia in two sparring sessions. It created an urban legend. I believe he even went to the Jaime Munguia and I think it was Liam Smith fight and kind of had like a little internet confrontation with Ryan. A lot has changed since then. Romero actually has won a title, whereas Garcia hasn't won a title, but I think most people, optics looking in, are looking at Ryan Garcia as the more enthused, more in their prime fighter. How do you look at it contextually with the backstory that Romero did have success in sparring sessions with him?
Sparring means nothing. What happens in sparring is supposed to stay in sparring. We don't know what the parameters of the sparring were, the agreements, the unspoken agreements that happen. I don't put a lot of stake in any beefs that come out of sparring, but I do put a little more stake in long-standing irritations between fighters and the fact that you have Ryan Garcia finally returning to the ring, aborted exhibition fights offshore notwithstanding. And people are curious. People are just darn curious. I don't think it makes any difference who's standing across from him, as long as they are reasonably on the outside, past the eye test competitive. Now, do any of us think that Golden Boy and His Excellency are going to put Ryan Garcia in serious danger? Hell no, not a chance. Yes, on paper, Rolando Romero has a championship in his past, which was more or less handed to him by a referee's bad decision. So I don't put a lot of stake in that. And he's also got the crap kicked out of him several times, notably in my memory is the beatdown he took from Isaac Pitbull Cruz. So, do I think Rolly has a shot? Maybe on the outside. Upsets are always possible in boxing. Just as we think things are cooked, you get one that's an eye popper. I don't think it's going to happen in this case. Rolly is there. Rolly earned this fight because he's good at talking up a fight. He's good at promoting a fight. Although for this promotion, he's been incredibly quiet, very toned down, which to me sort of belies the reason he's even there. Looking at the two of them also side by side, let me tell you, folks, Ryan Garcia is a big boy these days. He's going to dwarf Romero size-wise. I don't know what kind of rehydration clause they have, if any. It's not a title fight. I doubt there'll be any controls on Ryan. Um, And I think that he will deliver the performance he needs to get him back on everybody's radar after it will be almost a year to the day out of the ring, a year and a couple of days. He's there to tick a box, you know, get across the finish line, knock Rolly out, and move on to the fight we're all really interested in, which is that rematch with Devin Haney. Now, on the undercard, Haney has to do his job too, but the one we're all really going to be looking at because of this year out of the ring is Ryan.
So I think I see it a little differently just because, like, Well, I think there's two X factors for me. Derek James being with Ryan Garcia. I think Derek is one of the best coaches in boxing, and he constantly gets underrated. There was maybe a time where we heard a lot about him, but now I think people forget about just how good of a coach he is. I think that James being with Garcia is an improvement over Eddie Reynoso because Reynoso's spread thin, right? Canelo's fighting. Oscar Valdez is someone he's built a relationship with. You don't know where he fits into that system. Whereas Derek James is going to be all in on Ryan Garcia, and he's a proven high level operator who's led many fighters to world titles. And in many ways, with Jermell Charlo, I don't think he would have won certain fights without Derek James being in the corner. That being said, I bring up the sparring because I remember getting beat up more than winning sparring sessions, and there was always lingering effects to those. There was always like, man, this guy kind of hits hard. And even if you got the better, you always remembered, oh, that guy hits hard. This guy does that. I know Ryan has a deeper amateur pedigree. Rolly kind of alluded to that in a video preview. How many fights do you guys have? Because he kind of came in as a madman. I think the thing I'm looking for is what made Rolly special was he was reckless, kind of like a Kareem Mayfield and other guys before him, reckless with power. And is the way he's behaving in press conference, is that going to be how he fights? Because if he fights the way he's behaving in the press conferences, I think we don't think he has a chance. Or is he just holding it in and going in there? For me, Rolly is the big X factor because if he comes in there and takes risks, takes chances, he's a lot better than people think because his power is legitimate.
Well, that's what gives him the chance, right? That, anybody that can knock someone out has a chance to win a fight and right to that final bell. But as Rolly has stepped up in opposition, his wild swinging, approach to a fight, he can do that with a lesser opponent. He can't do that with talent at the top of the division. I mean, Super Matias was running rings around him until he wasn't, unfortunately. Funny you should bring up Derek James. So Derek was at the media workout here in San Diego. Ryan is training here in San Diego, not at Derek's gym in Texas. And apparently he insisted on that. Okay, Derek came to San Diego, so Derek's training him here. And the media workout is, I believe, on Golden Boy's YouTube channel, including interviews that Derek did with the broadcasters. Go back and look at it. Derek James, first of all, was just salty as hell. He was just salty the whole interview, irritated. He made it fairly clear that he really didn't want to train Ryan in San Diego, but if he wanted the job, he had to do it there. But there wasn't enough tough sparring, and you're in a nice city where there's a beach right out there, and it's sunny and nice every day, and there's just too soft. He said too soft more than once. I didn't like the sound of that, actually, but I'm not sure that Ryan Garcia gets a lot of schooling from his trainers. I think they're there merely to impose some kind of schedule and discipline on him, but I'm not sure what they teach him. But clearly, Ryan is comfortable with Derek, and Derek, grudgingly came to San Diego, even though, by the way, he also complained he'd only been able to wear shorts three days during his stay in San Diego. So clearly, they're along the coastline somewhere where it's cool. That attitude really struck me with Derek. Um, and I don't know whether it translates into the fight or not. I'm not sure for this fight it's critical. Ryan just needed somebody to keep him on the straight and narrow in the gym, focused on the goal. Needs to get through May 2nd, and then he needs to get serious.
Derek's a genuine guy. That's why I like him. And I like guys that like, he's not going to sugarcoat it. It's obvious if you're saying I didn't watch the things, but if he's irritated, I kind of like someone that comes out and says I'm irritated. Like that's my kind of guy. And I kind of like that he's just like, he's frustrated and things aren't going his way. I prefer those guys over the, everything's good and then after the fight they crap on you. So that just makes me like Derek a little bit more. Um, I think the problem with a lot of these young fighters, whether it's Ryan Garcia or many of them, Gervonta Davis, I think Ryan goes in there and freestyles like a rapper. He freestyles a fight, and there's three evenly competitive fights on this card, and it really feels like one underdog is going to win. And I can't tell you which one, but I think that with Rolly Romero, a lot of people are underrating him coming into this fight, and this is not a fight for Ryan to go in there and freestyle. He's coming off a year layoff, off of probably his best performance as a pro, or the performance that most validated him as a pro. And he really needs to build off of that performance and not kind of go in there and maybe fall into some old habits like he did in the Oscar Duarte fight.
I think he might end up being a lot more cautious than we think. I mean, the stakes are huge for Ryan. He's got to get this win and put himself back in the mix after, a huge debacle and stumbling block in his career. Maybe he was riding as high as you get after that victory until he got popped. So he can't afford to be fooling around, showboating. And you're right, he really shouldn't be freestyling. But I do think he's going to handle Rolly, if not easily. I don't really have any doubts about him handling it. I do think you're absolutely right about there being an upset on this card, but I don't think it's going to be Rolly.
Okay, that's a teaser alert. So if you're listening on the podcast or on the YouTube's podcast, you get another episode with some other esteemed guest. If you're listening on YouTube, well, it stops right here. But if you're listening on the newsletter, well, you get the analysis because you are a sicko, and it's awesome because we made it free so everyone can have it.